A very good evening, viewers. I'm your host Ratan Sharda, and you're watching Swarajya Conversations. Religious radicalism is brewing in Kerala, a state that is known as God's own country. Today, we are forced to ask which God does it really belong to? And if you think what I've just said is really provocative, you have to watch this video. Dr. Ratan Sharda, thank you so much, sir, for joining me for this conversation today. I hope you're very well. Good evening and
namaste. Yeah, I'm good. Namaskar.
Ratanji, you've obviously seen the video where a very young boy has been raising such provocative slogans against one particular community, or should I say two particular communities. First of all, Kashmir was unpopular for young boys and women, being used as cannon fodder in launching a religious war against the Union of India. Today, a minor boy in Kerala is being used in a similar capacity and he's being investigated. Does India have another major issue at its doorsteps, Ratanji?
Sharon, this issue has been staring at us for some time now. It's not that it's up to our door, it's already there. And this started long back when there were already extremist elements in Kerala. And if you remember, Professor Thomas' hand and feet were slashed because he put up a question in the questionnaire about the Prophet, or I think Allah. So that disturbed those sensitive, frightened souls, and they hacked his head and feet. So that was the starting. And then they were lauded, and things went on and on. It began with Muslim League, then it turned into some kind of new organizations. Then SIMI came in, then SIMI was banned, then PFI came in, then PFI got a political arm called SDPI, and it went on, and the secular parties have kept their mouth shut, their eyes shut, and try to sidetrack because somehow they feel that they will get some advantage out of it. If you remember the earlier days when this terror had started, Kannur, the headquarters of CPM in the sense, is supposed to be the biggest, strongest so-called party village. And those are the areas where earlier terrorists were found. And then we had the issue of love jihad, which people kept on denying. Love jihad that resulted in girls being sent to Syria and to Middle East to work as either for Mujahid or even as a comfort woman. We know those stories. And some of them want to come back now, and we know how the dream has shattered. So this continuous brainwashing of the people and our secular party's refusal to take things seriously. Of course, Congress would never act against these people. Rahul Gandhi chose Wayanad, where they got support, indirect support of these parties. And then Communist Party also looks at this vote bank, and though it claims to take action, but hardly much action is taken. And you will also remember Madani, who got a completely unanimous decision from the assembly. A special resolution was passed to release him on bail, and he's the person who created havoc in Coimbatore in serial blast when Mr. Advani visited there. So this is that long a story. It is not something new. Our problem is that we keep our eyes closed in the interest of vote banks, and then things become to show we have nothing in hand and we feel something new has happened. And this brainwashing is continuous. It is something new. They have special seminaries. They have special seminaries to groom girls from Christian and Hindu communities. and Christians have slowly realized how their girls are also being lost. I did a YouTube in which one of the sects of the Christianity and the clerics who actually are working against it, they told me that that particular sect itself has 4,500 missing girls. And there are more if you look at other sampradaya, denominations of Christianity in Kerala. And now
Right.
they are trying to fight it back. So this is the condition. It's very aggressive move there. And that I think this thing is called Satyasarani or something, where this grooming is done. And knowing all this, and if politicians close their eyes, then naturally we think that the contagion is bad. Because if terrorists can move openly, if they can insult a yogi by showing him his copy being beaten up, RSS himself being shown in chain, and no action is taken. So you are somehow encouraging and nurturing these elements. But today we are seeing the dirty face. 5 times a day, young children are exposed to this, and they then make these slogans. For them, it's religious. They don't feel they are doing anything wrong. Look at the way public discourse is being conducted.
Even if you were to ignore the political binaries with which we see this particular issue, one naturally relies on the judiciary to step in matters of such prominence. But the Kerala High Court today says that these two organizations that are in relevance right now, PFI and SDPI, are extremist outfits, but they're not banned outfits.
Yes, they will go to they will go to legal niceties. They think that they should be banned. But if you are not banned, can you go ahead and spew hate against other communities? Is that right? And when these a few fringe elements in UP did a Dharma Sansad and made some provocative statements, they were arrested. They were not given bails. They were in jail for a long time before they got bails. If that can be invoked by the courts, I do not know whether all the courts in India are following the same constitution. Sometimes I feel. So you find that one person gets bail for spewing hatred against Bhagwan Shiva. Another person in Maharashtra who just forwards a post criticizing a leader is put behind bar for 14 days without bail. So why is the constitution uniform, or constitution is so open that somebody in Kerala can take one view, somebody in UP can take another view, somebody in Delhi can take another view? That is a serious question. So is there a problem of interpretation of constitution, or there are other interests who try to play with the constitution because they're sitting there? I would not say play, but interpret the way they want to, because in the four walls of the court you can't challenge them. How can you say there's such a high provocation? Naturally, the kid doesn't know a thing. Kid has been fed all this hate, but this hate is being propagated 24 by 7, 5 times a day, and there is no question asked by the court. They go for all summary petitions and all, but for this, they don't feel that things have gone too wrong, too much out of hand. What can be worse than in a state where there are nearly equal, there are just about 48% Hindus as far as I understand, though the last census doesn't show that, and the two communities are equally balanced, and they are around one third, sorry, half, having this kind of very big communities in a very high demographic proportion. Should court not take care that these people are not harassed? Why church was disallowed the appeal for love jihad? Now Christians are speaking against it. They are being also harassed. If that is the situation, knowing all the cases that come to courts, how can courts say they are not banned? Banning is one thing, but somebody who is not banned can tomorrow go to my square in my market and start shouting inanities and hate for other communities? I cannot. The entire idea of freedom of speech is when they say that my freedom stops where your nose begins. That very clearly is cited. So why court should use such a language, I do not know. As a person who is not a lawyer, but as a common man who sees the difference between handling of somebody in UP, another person is Kerala, somewhere else in Delhi, I feel the interpretation is going totally haywire, and judiciary is basically trying to shirk away the responsibility.
Congress and the communists have alleged in both the states, Kerala and Bengal, that the BJP and the Sangh are responsible for provocating communal violence in those particular states. But in this particular case, where the boys seem to be hurling such provocative statements, they were even hurling them against the Christians. What are your thoughts on this?
See, first of all, especially Kerala and Bengal, if they are really politicians, if they really think something, if there's some got brains. In Bengal, there was no RSS base or there was no Jansang when in 1946 there was direct action. They were nowhere there when in 1947 there were huge riots, massacre of Hindus. They were not there in Kerala when Moplah started. The entire Khilafat movement or support to Khalifa, which began in Kerala, is something which has nothing to do with the RSS. RSS was not there at that time. VHP was not there. BJP was not there. So then, after the Moplah violence in 1920, right to 24, there was series of riots across India, and the RSS was born in 1925. BJP was born in 1951, Jansang was born in 1951, VHP was born in 1964. So all this talk is so utter nonsense. They are totally, see, these people are encouraging such violent elements, such hate-filled elements, just for sake of votes. They have lost their logic, they have lost their mind to claim that somebody else is provoking. And for last from 8th century onwards, world over, violence, conversions, raping the women, selling them, this is happening across the world. So is RSS VHP responsible for that? What is happening in Pakistan? Are they responsible the way the minorities have been butchered and have been thrown out of their own country? What happened in Afghanistan? Now, girls are not being allowed outside. They are not allowed to go for schooling beyond the standard. Is there any VHP RSS there? So, this kind of total responsibility against the perpetrators of hate philosophy continuously, they are totally deaf, dumb, and blind. They are just looking for votes. They have no care for the community or the harmony or for the people.
Today, when people are afraid
And
to speak up for
remember,
their
Kerala
own
is the place
community,
which gave asylum to Christians 2000 years back. It is the
right?
same state which got the first mosque made outside Saudi Arabia. Despite that, they believe that they could treat the Hindus the way they did in 1920, and that could be brushed aside in the name of harmony. I think then this one-way street has to stop somewhere. At least the law and order machinery and constitution and the judiciary should be above all this. They don't belong to a political party.
So, what do you think is the way going forward? Because a lot of people are also upset that they're today very afraid of speaking out their particular minds, whether it's in Bengal or in Kerala, and that the Sangh or any other politically right of center outfits do not provide them enough political protection. And that is one common allegation that has been leveled against the Sangh, the BJP, and all of these players from time to time.
Now tell me, in Kerala, RSS, the RSS attack on RSS began somewhere in 1948 when the work began there. It picked up pace in 1960s, where the current chief minister was the first person, one of the first persons to be accused of that particular murder of the RSS worker. He got free because the case may have not been put up properly. From then onwards, it is continuous violence. Does anyone speak about the RSS, the killings of the RSS volunteers? None. RSS struggled on the road itself, on the streets itself. Its people also suffered. They went to jail. They suffered imprisonment. All this happened in a very, very in an atmosphere which was totally anti-Hindu, anti-RSS. Whether it was Congress party or whether it was communist-led alliances, they suffered. They kept on struggling. They kept on growing. Then where did they get support from? From the organization itself. Now, if you say that organization doesn't do enough, did anybody come up and did the society rise? And did RSS seek some kind of justification for what is happening to it? No. It knew it has been attacked despite its non-violent work. It struggled, it fought against those people and paid a price. So the lesson is that society has to rise. Because despite that, RSS and Hindu society kept on working and uniting in Kerala, and today's situation is much different from what it was earlier. As far as Bengal is concerned, who controls the law and order? Like in Kerala, it was either left or right. Here, left or Congress, and here in Bengal, it was earlier Marxist, then Congress, then TMC, and first Congress, then CPM, then the TMC, everybody is relied on violence continuously. In a state, in a law and order situation, what does center do? Today, the 356 is not so easy to implement. This was done by opposition Janata Party government because they realized it's misused by Mrs. Gandhi continuously. They tried to improve the situation and they modified the laws so as per democratic norms you cannot easily dissolve the assembly or put in president's rule. And if the people who are governing, if the so-called secular people who have democratic, supposedly democratic government, go on oppressing people, creating state violence, then how do you think that RSS, who itself is being targeted, should respond? So the counter question is then how does a private organization, an organization of the people without government power, should support the people when then itself is suffering?
Right.
It stands up to the people. The reason they are being targeted because even post-poll violence, it was only RSS, BHP which stood the ground, which supported the people, went to file cases. Even the ground level BJP workers there all the while trying to somehow fight back. But when entire state machinery against you, either you accept that this particular government is totally non-democratic and Supreme Court takes a suo motu action and says this must stop, or this kind of lawlessness will continue. In Rajasthan, same thing has happened. So to blame the so-called democratic secular parties, not to blame them but to blame RSS, BJP is really a travesty. People are saying so, are they doing disservice to the Hindu society and to the nation itself? They are twisting the entire argument. The people who should control the law and order, whom you elected, whether I was there or whosoever, people elected, they are not responsible for somebody outside the state, somebody outside the government. That organization is responsible. What kind of logic is this? This is defeatist. This is only trying to divert people's attention. And these people either do not understand what is the politics and democratic norms or constitution, or they are deliberately trying to play mischief and trying to put the onus on the people who themselves suffers. Unfortunately, RSS, BJP or Hindus don't play victim card. They don't go to international players. They don't create a tamasha outside, even though even if they're not suffered like Muslims. So this so-called Islamophobia being used to measure and slam other communities and create hate is a tool that has to be exposed. And anybody is trying to shift the blame on organizations which are working on the ground under huge oppression by the state government itself, they have to think again. Has anybody gone to Calcutta High Court and put a case against the TMC government? Has anybody, any worthy in Kerala, gone to the Supreme Court and put a petition against what is happening in Kerala? If they have not, would use the simple legal tool, they have no right to tell the people who are actually working on the field to protect themselves. Who has gone out and actually helped them?
Right.
We mutual help to each other, the society, the people.
This is one of the reasons why even that young boy in the video said that this is not Gujarat, but this is Kerala, and we'll take care of you the way we want to.
Yes. So do we realize that these governments in the garb of democratic government, they are actually using state machinery?
Right.
This has not happened any time in India for years, except Kerala in earlier times when they were closing their eyes to the communist oppression and communist violence. This such brazen use of state power to oppress communities who don't agree with you, whether they're Hindu or Muslim or Christian, is something that has not happened earlier in the independent India.
Ratanji, do you believe that this can actually hinder the growth of the RSS or the Sangh Parivar in these particular states, or do you think this will further motivate people to join the Sangh?
See, I've already told you in Kerala, despite all the oppression, despite all the violence against RSS has grown. It has reached every village. We should not compare the voting, political voting to what is happening on the ground. Hundreds of seva karyas are happening there. The schools are running, colleges are running, despite all the repression. And organization is growing. So it is not a question of RSS growing or not. It is the question of Hindu society waking up to the dangers it faces and uses RSS as a vehicle for organization, uniting and creating strong cadre that they can face this kind of onslaught.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Bengal also same thing is possible. Bengal also, see, the organization was strong enough to create an alternative to TMC. But this wholly jihadi kind of approach, jihadi kind of violence in Bengal, which nearly reach the level of direct action, if I may say so, if when real figures come, then naturally people have to rise. There is no other way. Whether they rise through RSS, whether they rise independently and fight against these anti-democratic people, that we have to see. Because even during emergency, it was just RSS that continuously worked for 19 months. It didn't get scared, others got scared. So struggle has to continue. Finally, these oppressive forces will be defeated. There is no doubt about it. And mind you, this kind of religious-based propaganda, religious-based hate, we have to recognize the institutionalization of hate, institutionalize of creating violence, and unless we recognize that, we take action against that at every level, we will face worse days ahead. And then the secular forces will nowhere to hide.
Right. There was no RSS in a pre-partition era where there was community tension which was provoked by the other community. The communists and the Congress have seen the onslaught of a particular community, the Hindu communities, for decades together, but it is ultimately up to the people to wake up to the reality and smell the coffee.
When you talk about Kerala, you will remember that in Kerala, when the violence happened, what was the reaction of Gandhiji and what was the reaction of Nehru? I leave it unsaid because it is too ridiculous to even speak about it. But it was shameful to say the least. Though I don't want to disrespect Gandhiji, but his quotation, his views at that time, which he later realized that he made a mistake. I have quoted in my book about how he felt that he made a wrong statement, or he took it in the did not understand the depth of what has happened and how people have suffered. So once you start justifying at that time, and then you say that we need harmony. Harmony is not one-way street. Communal amity is not one-way street. And that is the price we paid after losing 1/3 of the land to people, to the people who believed in violence today want to bow down to the same violence. It will not happen.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Ratanji. I know you've had a very busy day and you've traveled all the day, but your comments will be, I'm sure, taken very seriously by a lot of people who are very concerned about the violence that has been taking place. Namaste and a very good evening, sir.
Thank you.